Someone writes a note and slips it into a bottle, and then from a distant shore they release it. Where after a long journey, it washes up right here, just waiting to be found. Sometimes in life, discoveries are made randomly, and sometimes they're made as a result of someone seeking diligently after a treasure, and they continue to seek until they find it. Maybe that's why searching will always be part of the human experience and why discovery will always be its reward.
Whether by random chance or because you're seeking help in your parenting, discovering the rich treasures of understanding and wisdom comes to those who seek it. Right now, our paths have come together as we begin the journey of exploring the incredible, fun-filled, and sometimes fatiguing world of toddlers.
And helping you acquire useful knowledge that can make the journey at toddlerhood both understandable and manageable is a primary objective of each one of our visits. But like anything else in life, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. The more you seek, the more you will discover.
So we encourage you to do your weekly reading, answer your study questions, and stay connected with other moms and dads who share your common values, goals, and dreams.
And seek understanding, not just knowledge, but understanding, for wisdom is not far behind.
Also joining us on this journey will be Rich and Julie Young and Greg and Tara Banks, who minister with us locally, and David and Carissa Scottford from Perth, Australia, who are part of our international leadership team.
With the help of these three families, we are confident that the information we're going to be providing will be both timely and certainly relevant.
Well, with all that said, let's take the first step in our journey, and we're going to begin by asking the simple question, do you know why you are parenting the way you are parenting?
Let's find out right now. There's a passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 that compares this life that we share with a foot race. Every race has runners who have only one goal in mind, and that's to jump out ahead of the pack and compete to finish first. That's all they train for, that single moment of crossing the line ahead of everyone else. For most runners, though, the goal is not so much to finish the race first, it's to finish the race well. And I guess the same thing can be said about this race we share in as mothers and fathers. When it comes to parenting, it may be a relief to know that we don't have to worry about finishing first. We just need to worry about having a long-term strategy for finishing the race well.
A long-term strategy. I think as a mom and dad, you're probably thinking about that 18-month-old or 2-year-old in your home and all the challenges that you're facing right now. Your mind isn't focused on a strategy, let alone finishing a race. You're probably just thinking, how am I going to survive this day? Honey, I have the keys. You ready to go?
I am, hon, and I have my number. This is going to be a fun morning for me. I'm going to join thousands of runners who are going to converge on Charleston to run an annual 5K race. The most obvious factor about a race is the fact that we all run the same course. Now, we may not all run it the same way or in the same time, but we all have to move along the same pathway from start to finish. Well, parenting really is no different. There is the responsibility that we have to run the course and run it well and run it wisely. There's a starting line and there's a finish line. But before you rush into the how-to mechanics of parenting, you might want to find out something about the course that you're about to run. Okay, hon, I'm ready. Let's go.
How will you prepare for the most important race in your life? That being providing a healthy spiritual and generational legacy to your children. When you finally reach that finish line, what is it that you hope to see after the years of investing into that little life and heart? Do you have a plan?
You know, Anne-Marie and I have come across moms and dads who seem to lack direction in their parenting. That is, they have no spiritual goals or behavioral goals for their children. They are either pulled along by the tide of time or worse, the tug of the crowd.
But it doesn't have to be that way for you. You can and should be parenting with purpose, conviction, and direction. but it comes from understanding the why factor in your parenting.
The why factor. Why? Such a little word, but it has profound implications for moms and dads. Do you know what why represents? Not the letter Y, but the concept of why. Why is what keeps you on course and moving forward. Why is what defines you as a mom and dad. Why forms the basis of your personal convictions, and why gives you the resolve to stay consistent in your parenting. The why of parenting, where does it come from? How do you discover it as a mom and dad? Look, I have a race to get ready for, but when the events of this day are over and the crowds disperse and the city returns to normal activity, I would like to invite you to join me at the starting line and we'll talk through the why factor of parenting. I'll see you there, and hon, I'll see you at the finish line.
Enjoy that race.
Thanks, sweetie.
Why? Why? Why?
Why? Why?
Why? This is the line that marked the starting point for many runners in the race. Actually, there are other starting points right in front of that bus. There was a second starting point. That was for the runners who were going to complete the race in 18 to 21 minutes. And then, well, about an eighth of a mile in front of them was the actual starting point where the really fast runners gathered, because they had one intent, and that was to cross that finish line first. In parenting, it's sort of the same way. When the gun went off for the start of the race, we all looked the same, we all acted the same, we all ran the same pace because really there was no place to go. But a quarter of a mile in front of the race, that's when separation occurred. That's when individual strategies began to kick in. Well, in parenting, the same thing happens. In the beginning, we all looked the same. I mean, there's no place to go, but separation begins to take place right around 18 months. Two reasons. Number one, on the child side of it, children grow developmentally to a point where the cause and effect of mom and dad's instructions begins to make sense. Their training begins to make sense to them. On the parent side, though, this is when we begin to use how and why, and our beliefs begin to kick in, and that's when separation takes over. By the time we got to this particular neighborhood and this particular street, clearly separation had occurred among the runners. Now, this we know. Runners separate because of their ability.
And parents separate because of their beliefs. And it really all begins there, because we all have our core beliefs that are going to influence how we parent and the emphasis that we're going to place in our parenting.
Exactly. In fact, it is our beliefs that lead us to the why of parenting. Here, let me put all the pieces together by drawing out this equation.
Boy, that is really beginning to remind me of a bad Algebra 1 experience.
It's not going to be quite as bad as it looks, honey, once you begin to add value to some of these letters. But I'll tell you what we can do. Why don't we get ourselves a cup of coffee, find a quiet spot, and you and I can work through this equation together.
I like that idea.
Okay. Okay, now that we have an equation to work with, let's find out what each letter represents. Our equation starts with the letter B. B represents beliefs. Now, where do our beliefs come from? Well, that question is really as much philosophical as it is practical. We all possess what theologians refer to as the ultimate presupposition. Ultimate means above all. Presupposition means the first assumption or the first belief.
Now, if I understand this correctly, ultimate presuppositions means
that there is one assumption above all other assumptions. So where is that going to take us here?
Well, hon, this really is the starting point of all personal beliefs, because what we believe at the top of our thought process eventually trickles down into our parenting. For example, for the atheist, the ultimate presupposition that there is no God, that view will influence the training priorities in the home. And the same would be true for a mom and dad who work from a pantheistic worldview. Those who believe that God is within the universe and not above it, or that God is not a person but a divine matter contained within creation, well, that mom and dad will approach their parenting with a different set of values. In the same way, but different, Christians begin with the single belief that God is above all, the creator and sustainer of all, and has communicated his will to mankind for his glory and certainly for our benefit.
Gary?
Yes, right here.
Enjoy.
Thank you. So, our ultimate presupposition, that first belief, subsequently impacts all categories of belief down the line. It not only impacts what we believe, but what Anne-Marie and I call the urgency of belief.
And that's why we continue to remind parents that their child's holiness is a greater training priority than their child's happiness.
Absolutely. I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, just knowing that our parenting is a tool that God can use to glorify himself and to meet his kingdom purpose, well, that produces a sense of urgency within my spirit and certainly a priority in our particular training.
So from our first beliefs come several common subcategories of beliefs, including what?
Well, the subcategories include what we believe about marriage and family, the moral training of children, your view of education and finances. What do you believe about spending, savings, and giving?
This extends to friendships and what we call like-minded communities. It also includes health and safety issues, nutrition and sleep.
Yes, and training in the knowledge of God, his redemption, and the meaning of worship for our children. These are some of the categories that make up the B in our equation of life.
Okay, we have these categories of belief, but what comes next?
The next letter in the equation is the small g. This represents our short and long-term parenting goals, those behavioral and intellectual objectives you hope to achieve through your training based upon your beliefs. So your beliefs and your goals form W, or the Y of our equation, more importantly, the Y of your parenting. Now once again, what is Y? Well, Y forms the left and right boundaries of your parenting. Y is what gives you resolve to get up out of that comfortable seat and take care of the little problem staring you in the face.
Next comes the letter H, representing how. This I understand. How represents the many options of applications and methods. How represents the various ways to accomplish the why of your beliefs. Let's take education as an example. From our worldview, we believe education is important. From those beliefs, Gary and I set some educational goals for our children. One was to give our children the best education we could afford that matched their skills and abilities. If we were parenting today, how might we facilitate these goals? First, and maybe most obvious, we can send our children to our local public schools. Or if we were parenting today, we could homeschool our children. That would be another option. A third option would be to send them to a church school or a Christian school. Another educational option is the GFI community school format, which is a combination of private school and homeschooling.
Of course, there are private schools, even boarding schools that we can send our children to. Those are two different options. Now, let's move away from the parenting example and look at a common office scenario.
Okay, here's the example. Your supervisor hands you a financial report and asks that you make several copies for the director's meeting later that day. How will you satisfy this request? The most obvious way is to use the copy machine. But that is not the only way. You can get the file and print the report from your computer. Or you can send the entire file to the director's BlackBerry or Palm Pilot.
So what can we learn from this office scenario? You see, there is only one reason or why you are duplicating the report, because your supervisor needs it for the board meeting. But there are many ways to duplicate that report for those board members. And here's the point. How you do something in the management of your home and children only has value to the extent that it can satisfy the why behind your beliefs. Let me repeat that, but in a slightly different way. The methods you are using in your parenting, from teaching self-control through blanket time to training and obedience, those methods only have value to the extent that they satisfy the big why of your beliefs. So what we have here is beliefs plus goals equals why, plus how equals solutions to your toddler's needs. Pretty easy, huh? Well, unfortunately, parenting is not a perfect science, nor does it fit neatly into an equation. Let's stop right here and step out of this moment just for a moment and revisit a point in my race where I ran into a little problem. We're now on Linwood Lane, and this was the 1 mile mark on the 5K race. And by the time I reached this point, I ran into a problem both literally and figuratively. You see, up to this point, I had passed almost 500 runners, not because I was going fast, but because they were going slow. And once you get into these real narrow streets, everything begins to clog up. I had a strategy, and my strategy wasn't working. Another way to say it is my how I was going to run this race was broken, and it was frustrating me. Same thing happens in parenting. Often we have methods and applications that have always worked for us, but suddenly they don't work anymore, and we spend so much time trying to fix the broken how rather than going back to the all-important why of our parenting. Let's talk about that. I remember the challenge I faced that day and the frustration in the moment. You train for months and think all is going well, and then suddenly you run into an obstacle. Or, in parenting, a stubborn child who decides today, I'm not going to get with the program. One of the most unrecognized causes of frustration in the management of the home or the management of the corporate office appears when we let how we do something become more important than why we are doing it.
And how common is this? More than I care to admit. Recently, I responded to a mom who asked a question about her 18-month-old daughter who suddenly went on a vegetable strike. For this child, it was clearly a nutrition issue. You see, up until now, Mom could put the vegetables on a plate, put them before her daughter, and she ate them all. Now she's decided, I don't want my vegetables. And so the mom was frustrated. I don't know what to do. How can I make her eat her vegetables? So taking her back to our equation, we helped her work through, okay, why do you want her to have the vegetables? She needs the nutrition. Is there another way you can give the vegetables to her? Well, yes. You know, we could mix them in with some other food that she likes. We could make Tara's zucchini bread.
Right.
So there were other ways to satisfy that how, to satisfy her why, which went back to her beliefs.
Exactly. You know, hon, I was amazed to think how something so simple could frustrate a mom. And I'm sure it was very, very real, but because she was so focused on her broken how, because I've always just given her vegetables and she's always just eaten it. But going back to why really freed her. I'm sure you're catching on, but bear with us for a couple of more examples. The first has Henry and I learning the lesson. We were in the middle of building our house. We were just in the portion of framing our house, and we had designed a back office right off of our bedroom. The back office, the problem we had was it was off of our bedroom, and that meant if anyone had to get to our computers or borrow our computers, they would have to go through a personal space, and we thought, we need to fix that. So the first thing we did when we realized the problem is we went and met with our builder to see if we could find an architectural solution to the challenge. I explained the challenge to him, and he began to look for alternatives. He looked at our plans, and he immediately thought of a simple solution: moved the offices to one of the two front bedrooms. Anne Marie pointed out that the view was in the back of the house, and we did not want to give that up. Another idea suggested was to put in a back hallway, but that meant rearranging the back half of the house, and the price tag, $20,000. We both knew that that was not a solution that was in our budget. Our builder also suggested that we put in some back stairs direct from the outside to the second floor office, but that idea was costly and certainly very unsightly. I remember that day we left frustrated that we could not find a practical solution to our problem. So what did I do? Well, I kept walking through our empty framed house looking for a solution. A solution did come, but not the way I thought it would. I eventually did something that was really smart. I went back and asked myself two questions. Two questions that can serve as a general guide to your everyday parenting. Question one, why? In our case, why did we need to give people access to our office? The answer is so they could have access to our computers. Question two, is there another way that I can give our visitors access to our computers? Well, of course, the answer is yes. There are several ways that I can do that. I can run Cat 5 cables throughout the house, and I did that. Or I could use wireless, and I did that. Or I could program my computer for remote access. I also did that. You see, I was looking at the problem from the side of my broken how. All I needed to do was to go back to my original why. Asking why forces us to think from the belief side of the equation rather than the method side of the equation. So what lesson can we take away from this? Well, we must be careful not to let how we are parenting become more important than the beliefs that drive our parenting. This certainly would be legalism at its worst. So what do we have? B, beliefs plus goals equals W or Y plus how equals solutions. Simple? Yeah. Liberating? Absolutely. Necessary? Well, only if you want to avoid frustration in your thinking process and in your parenting.
But hon, there are some cautions, right?
Oh yes, we could add a few qualifiers here. What we are not saying is to abandon anything that is working simply because you are having a bad day. If you're having a challenge with a method, then go back to your why. Your why is either going to confirm what you're doing and encourage you to persevere, or it's going to call you to make a course correction in the methods and the hows that you're using to achieve your goals. So either way, honey, win-win.
It is. And so why are we making this a point in our first visit? Because when parenting beliefs remain uncertain, then parenting convictions cannot be maintained. Lose your convictions and you lose your confidence to parent. That is when fear rushes in and takes over where convictions once reigned.
Yeah, and that is no way to parent or run the most important race in your life. When you finally arrive at that finish line, what do you hope to see after all those years of investing into the hearts of your children?
And as hard as it may be to imagine right now, we can tell you with certainty, before you know it, you will be at that finish line.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to see more, and check out the growingfamilies.life website to find more resources and to get connected.